All right. We're gonna do this really casual today, you guys, which is not typically like me. Only because it's more of a serious topic, I guess. And I've been wanting to do the video for a while and just haven't. If you read by the title of the video, kind of probably have an idea of what the video is about. If you are in a position where this might not be the right time for you to watch this video, it might be one that you want to skip, and I understand that. So protect your mama heart and maybe skip this one. Real quick before I get started too, I wanted to say that today was our due date, September 1st. And so that's one of the reasons why I chose to post this video on here. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a time that I just said I was in a really dark place on Instagram. I posted about it and you guys sent me some really warm messages of support, and I really held those to heart. I disappeared from Instagram for several weeks after I had learned the news of the status of my baby and what I had to decide to do. So that gives you some perspective of where my head was at the time and why I kind of went silent. I think one of the things that was really important to me in making this video is for others who are searching for the same information. Because when this happened to me, and in my particular situation, I was constantly searching for more information. And I just really feel that the more we talk about things, the more we put things out there, the better it is for the collective, for people who are searching for the same information. So that's the reason why I want to do this video, and specifically because my situation, I feel it was a little bit unique. I guess I'll just start off by telling you the background. I found out we were pregnant back in December, 5, 6, maybe even 6 weeks along, found out we were pregnant. Something just didn't feel right from the get-go. And that's probably gonna be like my ultimate theme throughout this video, is that it didn't feel right. And I know I'm an older mom, I'm over 40. Things are more complicated, or can be more complicated, and I just didn't feel like things were right. So we actually didn't tell anybody right away. I just wanted to go see my doctor. I'd actually had a yearly scheduled, and at my yearly I would be 8 weeks pregnant. So my yearly, I went in to see the doctor. She did like a courtesy check, because sometimes if you feel like something's wrong, or you tell your doctor you just want to make sure everything's okay, that they will do that. So she did my yearly, and although she wasn't supposed to do like an ultrasound or anything like that, she went ahead and did an ultrasound, because I would have been 8 weeks at this point, according to my last cycle. So she did the ultrasound, and it took her like a really long time to find anything, any information. And I was just kind of, laying there in the doctor's office, like okay, is everything okay? Is there a heartbeat? And she looked and looked and looked and looked and looked and looked, and I thought, okay, maybe my gut was right. Finally, she's like, okay, there's the heartbeat. Can you see it? And I was like, okay, there's a heartbeat, so the baby's fine. This is all in my head. And so I was like, okay, well, that's great. She said, well, you can come back for your first prenatal appointment, and we can go over things then and really take an in-depth look. And I was like, okay, I'll be about 10 weeks at this appointment. The baby was actually measuring small, and they were saying that that's, days can be off. You can have, a couple days wrong. So it really wasn't anything of concern. So I think we were about like 3 days off. So I went home. We still didn't tell anybody, because I just wanted to be sure, and we were going to go to that next appointment. At this point, I didn't have a lot of symptoms. Symptoms started to kick in a little bit after that. I got like really, really sick, nauseous, and just weird food things, and started gaining weight, really kind of fast, because I was kind of changing the way I normally eat. And I don't know, it felt different, and it felt off still. So we went to the first prenatal appointment. She did my routine care, and then they also did another ultrasound. And she had a hard time finding the heartbeat too, almost as long as the other doctor, and I kept getting concerned, like what keeps going on. But she was able to find it. I was like, here's the heartbeat, see, it's right there, it's right there, you can see it flickering. And then the baby was again measuring small, but this time the gap had widened. It was, instead of like 2 or 3 days, it had widened to like 4 or 5 days. And once again, they didn't really think anything of it, because this is kind of common. That appointment went well, and she scheduled me for all of my routine blood work. A couple of weeks went by. I did the genetic screening. They do your blood work and everything. And then a couple more weeks went by, and I started spotting. And I thought, oh my gosh, maybe this is that feeling I was having, maybe I'm gonna have a miscarriage. And I haven't had any miscarriages before, so I really didn't know what to expect. And that's when I really did a lot of research and making sure that, my symptoms were okay. But the doctor's like, okay, at this point I was 12 weeks along, and they said, okay, since you're 12 weeks along and it's Friday, go to the ER and go get checked out. So I went to the ER, got checked out, and once again, the ultrasound was the longest ultrasound I'd ever had. They did it on my abdomen, and then they went ahead and had to do it vaginally. And the thing is that we're in the middle of COVID, right? Your spouses can't come in the hospital. So I was like 100% alone during this whole. Of course, the techs don't tell you anything. They're not allowed to, and you have to hear it from the doctor. And then I waited and waited and waited, and finally, after this the world's longest ultrasound, the doctor said, okay, well, you're spotting, but there's a heartbeat, and it doesn't look like the baby's in any distress. And then once again, the baby did measure small, like even the gap kept widening. Went home from the ER feeling very happy that everything was fine, and I was getting ready to have our prenatal genetic screening. So that, I don't know if it's the same for all states, but in California you go and they check for all the chromosome issues, Down syndrome, and things like that. So you go to a specialist for that ultrasound, not your regular doctor. So that was scheduled for me, and it was going to be 13 weeks. And so because of COVID, once again, I was the only one to go to this appointment, and husbands couldn't come, nobody could come, and so I went by myself. And once again, I had the world's longest ultrasound with a technician not saying anything. She tried on my abdomen, had to go vaginally, and I know I've had a couple of kids that you shouldn't have to go vaginally for an ultrasound at 13 weeks or at 12 weeks. And the technician, she was as kind as could be given the circumstances, but I already knew by the length of this ultrasound and having had all that previous experience that just something wasn't matching up and that something was problematic, and I just didn't know what at this point. I started to prepare myself for what could be going wrong. And she said that she wanted to give the information to the doctor, and then the doctor would call and talk, or the doctor would have me in her office, which was down the hall, and I would talk to her. So as soon as I left and cleaned up and went to the doctor's office, the first thing she said is, is anybody here with you? And I'm like, oh, of course not. They told me not to bring anybody. We ultimately ended up FaceTiming my husband so he could be on the phone. And that's when she told us the results that our baby didn't develop a skull. So the whole top part of the head was not developed, and they could not see it on the scans. The medical term for that, I believe, is anecepahly. And it had a possibility of missing parts of the brain, because what happens is when you don't have a skull protecting the brain, the amniotic fluid is lethal to the baby, to the brain. But they couldn't tell that yet. They didn't know. She explained everything to us. Of course, it was very upsetting to hear, and I was just trying to digest everything and to listen to everything that she had to say. And basically, she said, I'm sorry, but this abnormality, this defect is 100% lethal. Your baby will not survive. There's 0% of surviving. We had a lot of questions, obviously, and we spent some time with her talking before I did my ugly cry, asking questions, steps and what to do next. And she said that a lot of times these babies go to term, and people can carry them to term, but they just die at birth, or they die within minutes of birth, or they die within hours, and sometimes days. Some of them die before they even get there, and then you have a miscarriage or a stillbirth. So she said that we had some decisions to make. We had to decide if we would like to terminate our pregnancy or if we would like to carry to term and basically see what happens. So we spent a good week, and this was like researching everything and deciding what we wanted to do, talking to people that have been through it. Like, I know I'm not the only one in the world that's had a miscarriage. I know there's tons of you out there that have probably had, more than one, several, in trying to get pregnant. And so I talked to a lot of people and got a lot of feedback. Finally, like I had found out, I had asked the doctor, can these babies donate their organs after they're born? And that was a possibility depending on the condition of the organs, because there was a lot of other abnormalities, not just the skull missing. There was a laundry list of some other things that showed up on the scan. Probably too many to name, but it kind of was irrelevant to mention now because the skull was the one thing. But there's other things, abdomen, some things not closing up and that kind of thing. But that's a whole nother subset of abnormalities. But the main thing was the skull. So they said, yeah, if you wanted to donate some little parts to another baby that needs them and they're in good condition to be donated, you can certainly do that. So that's basically what decided that I was going to carry to term. So this is about 14 weeks in. And so we started talking to our kids, explaining that I'm going to be pregnant for a long time and that there's not going to be a baby at the end. Well, there will be a baby at the end, but the baby's not going to survive. And what we're going to do with the baby after the baby passes. I started Googling pictures of babies born without skulls, which is the most gut-wrenching thing you could ever do, but I needed to normalize it. I needed to be okay with it. So I was doing a lot of research on that, and it was scary to know that I was going to have to do that. It was scary to know that I was going to have to go through a full-term pregnancy and have the results and know the result. At least the organ donation was something that was really keeping me at peace. And if there was any purpose that this could provide, then that felt like the purpose. I made the decision, and then we had another follow-up prenatal appointment. And that's the appointment that I was going to tell the doctor that that's what we had planned on doing. So at my 14-week appointment, I told the doctor we wanted to carry to term. And so she did my routine prenatal check, and we listened for our heartbeat, and she couldn't find one. She tried the Doppler, she tried the ultrasound, and she's like, I'm sorry, I don't hear a heartbeat anymore. And so I said, okay. The baby didn't make it. So she went ahead and scheduled another specialist appointment so they could check with a more detailed ultrasound just in case. And they tend to do this a lot, especially if there's a missing heartbeat. So they'll do another follow-up appointment, just to be sure, like a safety check. And so she went ahead and scheduled that. And then that following Monday, I went, and the same result. The specialist could not find a heartbeat as well. So we had to discuss options if I was going to miscarry naturally. At this point, I was about 15 weeks, or if I was going to have surgery to remove the baby. I think it's a D&C or a D&E, one of the two. I had to wait a couple of days before that actually happened, before they could fit me in. I was just doing everything under my power not to miscarry on my own, because I couldn't come to grips with doing that on my own, considering that I was 14, 15 weeks along. I just couldn't do it. They went ahead and scheduled me, and I went in for surgery at about 15 weeks. It went well. I had no complications, and everything went well. The other thing I wanted to know is that I had requested to have the baby remain so that we could bury it. And I want to mention that because I don't think a lot of people know that you can even do that. And it's a really important thing that if it's important to you, it was very important to me to be able to do that. So if you aren't aware of that, if your hospital doesn't mention it, you have a right to those baby remains, and then you can bury them. So because this baby wasn't 20 weeks yet, it was considered a miscarriage and not an actual baby, so it didn't have a birth certificate and anything like that. Even though it was a pain in the butt to get this the baby remains released to a mortuary and everything, it was really difficult. And I think it was difficult because not a lot of people do it, and not a lot of people request it. So if this is something that's important to you, just request it, ask. You have that right, and just know that. So after a lot of drama getting the remains, we were able to bury the baby. We had a small little ceremony with just my parents and our kids, and it was a really good closure for my husband and even the kids to have a physical burial as well, and a place that we can go and see the baby. It was very important to me to be able to make this video to give you all the details in case you are in a very similar situation with anencephaly or missing skull, to help get a perspective on someone else's experience. I encourage you, if this has happened to you, to share your story so that other women can understand or relate, or maybe they're just starting this journey or process and they're searching for information, and you can be helpful in that too. I'd love to hear your stories if you feel comfortable sharing down below in the comments as well. And I appreciate you guys for allowing me to share this about what has happened to me this year. All right, guys, that's it.